social trend did you come up with?
We had a social trend based on kind of a values-based economy or community, based on more empathy, I guess, from shared knowledge and connectivity.
Okay, great. So empathy is empathy is a social trend that Table 19 picked up on. 18, what did you come up with technology?
It was around the increased accessibility of devices for all age groups, interconnected.
Was there an example that you discussed, or?
Yeah, it was the fact that when we went even to university, we barely had a phone, and now 6-year-old kids have phones or iPads.
Yeah, I know, iPads.
Crazy.
Oh my goodness, have you seen the video on YouTube of the 2-year-old with a magazine? Yeah. And she's trying to do stuff and the magazine's not giving her any feedback. And see, to a 2-year-old, a magazine is just a broken iPad. So it's, a really good example. Thanks, guys. How did you guys go here with economic? Yep.
So we've got a global shift in buying power, so where the big markets are in the world.
Did you discuss any particular big market?
I guess there's a shift, more towards Asia and the Asian countries, India, China, that sort of thing. So. Yep.
Yeah, India, 1 billion people, half of them under the age of 25. Huge, and an emerging middle class or growing middle class. Really exciting. Okay, how'd you go environmentally?
We talked about the resurgence of farmers' markets and organic or natural grown food, which is actually the way food used to be grown.
Yeah, right. People love to know the story of where their food comes from these days, don't they? Do you know, in the UK, and you might have this here in New Zealand, although I haven't seen it. In the UK, what the largest supermarkets are doing is making the link between paddock and plate. So when you buy your carrots, there's a label that shows you exactly where the farm, how far your carrots travelled from, and people love that story. So yeah, a great trend environmentally, you bet. Politically, power, what did you come up with?
We had experimental policy, which is where you leak a policy, see if anyone likes it, and if they don't, you take it back.
I think you're going to keep that one. You're not going to take that one back, are you? How did you go organisationally? How are organisations shifting?
Really around flexibility. People work where they want, how they want, and what times they want. So organisations typically have a smaller footprint, and there's a lot more flexibility.
Yeah, at some time in the last few years, the technology that we have in our living room became so much more advanced than the technology they gave us at work, didn't it? And I mean, the amount of people that I heard one of the tables mention that people are bringing their own stuff to work to actually get work done because, I mean, my laptop's faster than this piece of junk, and I want the work done. So yeah, really interesting. And in fact, Starbucks. One of the reasons when Starbucks was really starting to grow and they were seeking additional injection of capital, they started ramping up their conversation about the third place. They wanted to be positioned as the third place, not home, not work, but a place where you could join others and do both, have home-style conversations with friends, but also feel comfortable to do your work. And certainly at Starbucks in New York, if you've ever been to one of those, it's like a library used to be. Probably got all their papers splayed out, and there's no sense of obligation to buy a coffee, it would seem. So there you go. So I'm not going to be able to get all of the tables conversations, but what we've just done is we've basically collected ideas from around the table about the context in which we're operating. And if I invited you to consider X times Y, that trend times your organisation, and what the opportunities that trend would mean to your organisation, I bet you would fill the A3 page in your folder with ideas about the implications and the opportunities. We don't have time to engage in that exercise today. That's an exercise that was introduced to me by Roger LaSalle. But what you might like to do is consider X times Y equals XY. What are all of the implications? What does it mean? What are the opportunities to your business if people are bringing their own technology or working wherever they like? What does it mean if your customers are doing that? What does it mean if your colleagues would prefer to be working that way? There could be all sorts of opportunities, I'm sure. Now, what I would like you to do is pull those A3 sheets out, because I'm going to introduce you to a framework that you'll be using your texters, if you're lucky enough to get one of the texters on the table, or your pen, to draw out. We're going to draw a grid. So the grid is going to have 3 columns in it and 4 rows. If you're not sure about which is a column and which is a row, so 3 columns, so there's going to be 2 lines down the page. And because there's going to be 4 rows, we need 3 lines across the page horizontally. So try and divide the A3 pages evenly as possible. So 2 lines to make 3 columns up and down, and 3 lines horizontally to make 4 rows. Make sense? It looks like people have really got their head around this, which is promising. So this is a framework my team and I developed, because what we started to notice is that, so Key Message is the name of my business, and what we do is we give fun and engaging presentations about the futures of just about every industry. So for those of you that are in banking, if you want to have a chat afterwards, I'm happy to just give away all of the trends that we talk about over a coffee. But basically we talk about how the world's changing in banking and finance, or how the world's changing in healthcare, or how it's changing in professional services generally. And these presentations led us to discover that there are really 2 types of audiences that we connect with. The first is people who have a real eye on the future. So the column over on the right hand, on the far left of your page is about strategy. It's about having an eye on the future. And audiences who have an eye on the future, they see possibilities. They're engaged with trends. They're interested in how the world's changing. And they can't believe that the future is taking so long to show up. Oh, well, I knew about that 10 years ago. I can't believe it hasn't become mainstream. People with an eye on the future are really exciting to be around. But sometimes people with an eye on the future, their wheels seem to be spinning. And for example, when I deal with academic groups or groups of activists, you find yourself listening to people who have got really compelling ideas for the future, but they're not getting any traction at all. They just don't have a seat at any table, and nothing is actually, wow, that's a really exciting idea that you have, if only people were actually listening or doing it. What we need for those people, what they really need, is a seat at the table, which is what you write in the far right-hand corner of your piece of paper. So that's about execution. Some of the audiences we come across are really engaged with execution. They love to make stuff happen. They are doers. So the people over on the Eye on the Future side are all about rigor and learning, and they're just a sponge for information. The people who have a seat at the table, that's their natural tendency, they are pulling the trigger. They are getting stuff done on a regular basis. So what we really want is we want the balance of both. We want the best of both worlds. What's your tendency? Do you see yourself as an eye on the future kind of person who just sees the world as it could be? Or do you see yourself as a trigger kind of person, a seat at the table person that gets stuff done? Turn to the person next to you and have a little confession moment. I'm going to do a straw poll. Okay, just finishing those final thoughts. We'll give you 10 seconds to finish that thought. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Please thank your partner. So how did we go? I'm really interested in this straw poll. Partners, keep your partner honest. I'd like to see a show of hands. Who sees themselves as an eye on the future person, a rigor person? Okay, that's interesting. So that's about half the room. And well, let's just see if I'm right, because people's buzzers might be broken. How many people see themselves as trigger people? If you can get your hands up, these people. Wow, and you're evenly distributed around the room, which is great news because it means that the rigor people can help the trigger people along as we have a conversation about your various skills. So when it comes to having an eye, what's that? If you have the power of balance, then that's fantastic. Well done, congratulations. And I think we're all. You must be 51-49 in one direction though, surely. Yeah, I think so. But I think that the pursuit of balance, or the pursuit of being able to benefit from our skills and our strengths while harnessing the strengths of others, is one of the major trends that we're starting to see around the world. In fact, the other day, I mentioned I was at South by Southwest, this amazing conference, and I saw a terrific speaker, and I was lined up to go and introduce myself because, you know, you like to mob speakers and have a little chat. I said, I really like what you did there. And anyway, so the guy in front of me on the line was from Rackspace. And Rackspace is a company with 4,500 employees. It's a technology company. And we got along so well that we actually ditched the speaker, went off and had Mexican together, and he sat down and he told me about this business, Rackspace. And he's so proud of his R&D team. He's got a research and development team of 400 people. Isn't that amazing to think that you've just got 400 people that get to have an eye on the future and work out how the organisation's going to have a seat at the table with their customers? 1/10 of the organisation, or 1/11 of the organisation. So what he was telling me is that StrengthsFinder, the Gallup, you've heard of StrengthsFinder? So you can go to StrengthsFinder 2.0 is the book. If you haven't heard of it, you've got to go and check this out. And you triggered this lady with your question about balance. So interaction, conversation. So what this head of research and development told me, this head of strategy told me, is that StrengthsFinder has changed his organisation. Now, I'm not on the payroll. I will benefit naught if you buy this book or if you go online and buy a code. But what StrengthsFinder is it's a self-assessment tool where over about half an hour you answer, I don't know the number, 50 questions about yourself, and it's all about your tendencies. And at the end of the process, you are emailed a link, and on the other side of that link is a report that tells you, according to this process, your 5 strengths. So my strengths are strategy, ideation, communication, achievement, which means hardworking, and woo, which means winning over others. So I've got the perfect job for those 5. I get to come up with ideas, I'm strategic, and I tell you, it is bliss. And I hope that, I bet many of the people in this room get to harness their 5 strengths, even though they don't necessarily know what their 5 are. The point is that at Rackspace, what they do is they publish their 5 strengths on everyone's door if they have an office, or on their cubicle wall. And the idea is this: when you go to ask someone a question, before you do, you stop a few meters away, you look at their 5 strengths and you ask yourself, am I asking the right person this question? Am I going to be benefiting from their strengths? And how can I frame this question so I'm playing to their strengths? Imagine if everyone that walked up to you during your work day only asked you questions that you were naturally gifted to solve. Wouldn't that be phenomenal? So the trick isn't about having all 34 strengths from StrengthsFinder. The trick is finding people across your network who have those other strengths that you can benefit from. The trick isn't being perfectly balanced and being able to have a natural tendency to both have an eye on the future and a seat at the table all the time. The trick is to have people who have an eye on the future in your network and have a seat at the table in your network so that you can benefit from each other's skills and abilities. So, there are 3 areas that my team and I divided this eye on the future idea into. And this is through observation and conversations with people who naturally have an eye on the future. And I bet those of you who threw your hands up on this one will recognize this pattern even if you don't use this language. So the first is collect. And this is where we collect ideas. The second is connect. And this is where we connect the dots. So we've already done an eye on the future exercise where we collected ideas about trends. And you each came up with a trend for social, tech, economic, environmental, political, and organisational. So when we were doing that, we were going from collecting ideas to starting to connect the dots. The reason the exercise didn't take 2 minutes is because enough people at each of the tables wanted to go the next step and say, well, what does this mean? What are the opportunities? What are the implications? What are we noticing? Starting to connect the dots, and trends and patterns started to emerge. Finally, conclusion. Concluding is where we start to imagine futures, where we say, well, where might this lead? What are the implications and the opportunities for us? Connect, collect, connect, conclude. So this could be a looped process where you are in an ongoing state over the course of your life, collecting ideas, connecting dots, and drawing conclusions. But it may be that you get stuck in an infinite loop of collecting ideas, connecting the dots, and drawing conclusions. Because it's just so fun, because you've just got such a natural talent for seeing opportunities. However, if you don't spend any of your time over here at getting stuff done, at seat at the table, then it will all be for naught. And so, guess what? we've had conversations and chats and listened to people who have a seat at the table and asked them what is it that they do that makes them so effective. And so those of you who put your hand up for this one, I bet you'll recognise this. You might not use this palette, these words, but I bet you naturally do this. So the first one is itch. People who have a seat at the table, they choose a big yes. Of all the things that could be achieved in the organisation, they have an itch that just needs to be scratched. A big yes, a why, a reason they get up in the morning, a sense of purpose. This needs to be something that can be universally relevant across the organisation. Ideally, it comes from these conversations over on the left-hand side, collecting ideas, connecting dots, and drawing conclusions. But ultimately, we need to abandon the majority of the ideas, the majority of the possibilities that we can imagine to pursue the one that we think is most critical to our success as a team. Once that itch has been chosen, that big yes, I mentioned earlier, when the whys are big enough, the hows take care of themselves. It starts to be a responsibility of the people with a seat at the table to communicate this big yes in a way that other people appreciate. And those of you who have been around inspiring leaders, whether they're positional leaders like CEOs or just natural behavioural leaders, for example, in people in community groups or activist groups who aren't necessarily given a title but know how to lead anyway. Because the simplest definition of leadership is when people want to follow you. People who are natural leaders move on from having a big yes that drives them, from itch to pitch. So this is over on the far right. We go from itch to pitch. They know how to sell their big yes so others buy in. And I bet those of you who are thinking, oh yes, I'm definitely an eye on the future type or I'm a seat at the table type, I bet you're starting to look at this framework and say, within the area that is my natural tendency, I have a natural tendency towards one of these three categories. I'm a natural salesperson. I'm naturally good at picking the why at the big yes, the itch, and pitching it for others. And then finally, you know what they do? They roll up their sleeves and they stitch. They actually get the work done. So what I'd like you to do is have a conversation at your table again. Table captains facilitate. What I'd like you to do is reflect individually for a moment which of these 6 tendencies, which of these 6 areas that you can spend your time in work or in life do you naturally have a knack for or that you like to pursue. So we'll give you, because it'll be a table conversation, we'll give you about 2 minutes. We'll put some music on, and please, table captains, I'm hoping that you'll make sure that there's a decent share of voice. You know what I'm talking about, right? Some people just love to talk, so you can be like a conductor. Make sure that everyone's being heard. 2 minutes, let's go for it. 2, 1, thank your table. Terrific. So, I'm very encouraged to see that everyone had A strength. So thank you very much for that. And I can see the way you were lighting up as you listened to each other. So it's lovely to have that warmth with complete strangers. In terms of the third column, this one in the middle, this is about pragmatism. And whether you are someone who has an eye on the future naturally or a seat at the table, it's this third column that we can all benefit from. This is about having a finger on the pulse and recognising that it's small moves, elegantly made, that make the biggest difference. And that's why the word small features in each of these. So the first is small world. That is, you need a small posse. What we see consistently from leaders who are achieving their visions, from leaders who are engaging their organisation or their teams in a way that inspire, they initially choose a few people to collaborate with. They don't rely on bringing the whole organisation with them. And this harks back to that idea from John Hagel about the edge and fostering your edge. The second idea is small talk. And that is, you don't always have 2 days like that property company in the Hunter Valley had to change the organisation. It may be that what you can afford to do is tomorrow Tuesdays, where once a month you have a Tuesday set aside where people have a brown bag lunch and talk about how the world's changing. It could be when you're talking about your inspiring vision for the organisation, you need to get it down to a pitch that takes less than 30 seconds. Not everyone's going to be ready for your entire thesis of how to change the world. And finally, small change. It's recognising that it's actually Literally, it could be a $10 innovation program that sets a fire to your idea that really lights up the room. We work with organisations that have $10 innovation programs, and the thing about $10 is it forces you to have very strict boundaries around what the ideas are. And it's really fun to say, well, you know, we've got a dramatic innovation program. It's a $10 innovation program. You've got an idea of how you could change the organisation for $10, let us know. And I've seen CEOs triple the budget straight away because there are 3 great ideas. And what a $30 or a $10 innovation program can do is inspire people to ask, what are the simple things that we can do that would make the biggest difference? What's the sheet of paper at the running store that communicates with a complete stranger that, you know, we actually care about your run more than we care about whether you spend money with us or not, that builds the deeper relationship? That's the 10-cent innovation program. So the next step, what could you do? You've only got a couple of minutes. You've got an A4 sheet of paper. If you haven't already used it, I'd like you to consider, we've talked about so many things, we've covered so much, and I know your groups had great ideas as well. So just in the next minute or two, I'd like you to quickly jot down 1 or 2 or 3 ideas that you could do differently. What are the 2 or 3 things that you could do differently from now on that you believe would make the biggest difference for your organisation when it comes to thinking about the future, when it comes to the purpose, when it comes to paying attention? What are the opportunities that you've perhaps uncovered over the last 90 minutes that we've had together? Trust your instincts. That's all the time you have. Grab a highlighter and highlight the one thing that you're going to do differently and cross out with a pen every other idea. Don't make life harder for yourself. Don't burden yourself with all of these obligations and expectations. Choose one. Cross out the others. They can come another day. One of the biggest challenges when you flare and come up with lots of ideas is that if you don't focus and decide what the big yes is going to be, what the thing you're going to focus on, is you can really beat yourself up over the next few years with all the things you haven't done. And that's so destructive. I encourage you to have idea funerals, where you literally have a ceremony for those ideas that will never be realised. Grieve, have a cry if you need to, about the ideas that you will not pursue because of the ideas that you're going to breathe life into. Cut yourself some slack. Who knows how to make a paper aeroplane, or what I believe is known as a dart? What I'd like you to do is write your mobile phone number and your name on your sheet of paper. So your name and your mobile number. See, the wisdom is in the group. Someone from a completely different industry is about to receive your dart with your highlighted thing that you're going to do. I don't know what's going to happen beyond today. The future can't be predicted. The best we can do is try to anticipate it. But here's the opportunity for us. We have a room full of potential accountability managers that will call us in a week and in a fortnight to check and see if we're doing that one thing. And I don't know who your accountability manager is going to be. But they're going to be the person that picks your dart up off the floor. So while you do that, I'm going to quickly discuss Michael Jackson with you, because Michael Jackson is a hero of mine, a true innovator, someone who anticipated trends before they'd occurred. And do you remember this music video with Michael Jackson? Who can name the song? Thriller, thank you. Michael Jackson's Thriller from 1983. You might remember the music video cost over $1 million to make. It used the best special effects, choreography, makeup. It was so cinematic it went for over 12 minutes. If you were watching Michael Jackson's Thriller all the way back in the early 80s, and someone had asked you to be a futurist and predict the future of music videos, what might you have imagined? $5, $10 million music videos that went for 90 minutes, music videos that were even more cinematic. See, the thing is that the future's got this funny way of not necessarily moving in a linear direction. Sometimes the future moves in waves. Trends and counter-trends come and pass. In fact, one of my favourite music videos from the last few years is this one. I think a few people might have seen this before. I love this music video. It's so different to the music video you might have imagined in 1983 as you imagine the future of music videos. It's fun, it's upbeat, it goes for about 3 minutes. Best of all, the story about this music video is what's really engaging, what's really exciting and inspiring. You see, this band, OK Go, knew they had great music. They even signed a deal with Capitol Records. But what Capitol Records didn't give them is a music video budget. And they knew that they were selling to cyborgs, people who wouldn't want to engage with their music unless they could see it as well. They knew that music was spreading virally via YouTube and they needed to put something up out there. They knew that they needed to have a philosophy of abundance, and even though they wanted to be famous as musicians and make money, they had to share their music video online for free. These guys fostered their edge by turning to the people around them, the wisdom in their group, to learn how it was that they were going to make a fantastic music video on a very modest budget. Using the power of small, these guys came up with a budget of less than $2,000. It was just over $1,000 Kiwi. And they came up with this idea. The wisdom was in the group. In fact, the guy with the pink shirt, the bald guy on the sort of the second from the left, his sister is a choreographer. And she choreographed this whole dance routine for her brother because, you know, that's what sisters do sometimes if they can. The guys knew that they wanted treadmills, but they didn't have a budget for treadmills. And so what they did is they found a shop that sold second-hand treadmills and had a 30-day return policy. So they set about making the video, but they didn't have a budget for a camera operator or an editor. And so what they did is they relied, again, on the power of small. They got a standard definition video camera, kind of like the standard definition camera you might have in your linen press or your cupboard at home, but you don't even pull it out at Christmas because it's so ugly and embarrassing. They shot it on a standard definition camera when high def was all the rage, because that's what they had. They worked with the available tools. They set it up on a tripod. Why? Because that meant they didn't need a camera operator. And they went to work on a video that didn't need editing because it was shot in one take. It took them 3 days of practice to do that one take, by the way. And here it is. Today, OK Go's Treadmills has been seen by more people than Michael Jackson's Thriller on YouTube. The wisdom is in the group, the power of small is available to us, the barriers are collapsing. As you imagine futures for yourselves and your organisations, I hope you remember some of the inspiring stories and anecdotes and frameworks that we use today. Thank you for being so engaging, and all the best for your future. May I invite you to throw your darts and find yourself an accountability manager. Thanks so much.